Okay, we'll be dividing by 2, part 2. Okay, so we can't take half of 5, so we're going to borrow. We're going to make that 4. Okay, the 1 comes over here, it makes this 15. Okay, we can't take half of 15, so we borrow from 15. Adds a 10 to the 4, we get 14, and this remains 8. So what we have here is a 4, 14, 14, and 8. And half of those numbers are 2, 7, 7, and 4. Okay, I want you to try number 2. We're going to pause the video and try number 2. Okay, let's take a look. We can't take half of 3, so let's borrow, and it becomes a 2. Then here we add 10 to here, we get 13. So we have 2 and 13. Well, we can't take half of 13, so we're going to borrow 1 from 13, make it 12, and the 1 adds here makes that 14. So that's half, and the 8. So these are all even numbers now. 2, 12, 14, and 8. So half of that will be 1, 6, 7, and 4. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. 8 we can take half of. 7 we cannot, so we're going to borrow from 7. So the 7 becomes a 6. And the 1 gets placed on with the 9 as a 10, so 10 plus 9 makes 19. Okay, we cannot take half of 19. It's an odd number, so we're going to borrow 1 and make that 18. And the 1 borrowed becomes a 10 over here, and this is now a 12. So our numbers now are 8, 6, 18, and 12. We'll take half of those now. So this becomes 4, 3, 9, and 6. We're done. Go ahead and try number 4 and pause the video. Okay, now let's take half of these numbers. 4 we can take half of. 9 we cannot, so we're going to borrow 1 from the 9 to make it 8. Okay. And from there we'll add the 1 or 10 to the 7, which makes it 17. Okay. Now, 17 we cannot take half of, so we're going to borrow 1 from there. It's going to become 16. And the 1 that we borrow from there will go to the 4, and that'll make that 14. Okay. So our numbers now are 4, 8, 16, and 14. We're going to take half of all those. We get 2, 4, 8, and 7 here. That's half. Let's take a look at number 5. We cannot take half of 7, so we're going to borrow 1 from it. So it makes it 6, and it turns the 5 here to a 15. Okay. Now we cannot take half of 15, so we're going to borrow 1 from there. It'll make it 14. And the 1 borrowed goes here to the 3 and makes that 13. We cannot take half of 13. It's an odd number. So we'll borrow 1 from there, and it'll become a 12. The 1 goes over here to the 8, making that an 18. So now our numbers are 6, 14, 12, and 18. Now let's take half of each of these. Half of the 6 is 3. Half of the 14 is 7. Half of the 12 is 6. Half of the 18 is 9. Okay. Number 4. Number 4, we cannot take half of 3, so we're going to make that a 2 by borrowing. Oh, sorry. Let's go to number 6. Okay, go ahead and do number 6 and pause the video. Okay, let's take a look. We cannot take half of 5, so we're going to borrow 1 from it. So it becomes a 4. The 1 goes over into the 7 as a 10, it becomes 17. Okay. We cannot take half of 17, that's an odd number, so we're going to borrow 1 from that. So we have 16 now. And the 1 borrows over here to the 3 as a 10, and it becomes 13. Now we're going to borrow 1 from the 13. The 13 will now become a 12. The 1 I borrowed from it now goes to the 4 and makes that 14 because we're adding 10 to it. Now let's take half of all the numbers here. The 4, the 16, the 12, and the 14. Half will be 2, 8, 6, and 7. Okay, now let's look at number 4. Number 4, I cannot take half of 3, so I'm going to borrow, make that 2, And the 1 I borrowed makes this 19. I cannot take half of 19, so I'm going to borrow 1 from there and make that 18. The 1 borrowed comes over here and makes this an 11. Okay. Now, we cannot take half of 11. It's an odd number. So I'm going to borrow 1 from there to make it 10. And the 1, 6 to make it 16 because we're adding 10 to it. Okay, now we can take half of 2, half of 18, half of 10, and half of 16. That'll be 1, 9, 5, and 8. Okay, I want you to go ahead and try number 8 and pause the video. Okay, now let's take half of this. First, we cannot take half of 9 because it's an odd number, so we'll borrow from it. So it becomes an 8. And this makes the 1 and 11 when you add 10 to it. Okay, 11 is an odd number. We're going to borrow 1 from that. It's going to become a 10. And the 1 borrowed goes to the 3 as a 10, and it becomes 13. Okay, can I take half of 13? Again, it's an odd number. So we'll borrow 1 from the 13. It becomes a 12. And the 1 borrowed becomes a 2. That becomes a 12. So the numbers that we're going to take half of are 8, 10, 12, and 12. That will be 4, 5, 6, and 6. Now let's take a look at number 5 here. Number 5, we want to take half of 7. 7 is odd. We can't take half of it, so let's borrow 1 from it. When I borrow 1 from it, it becomes a 6. The 1 that I borrow becomes a 10. As to the 5, we get a 15.
I Sensei, I'm next door.
The 15, we're going to borrow 1 from the 15. It becomes a 14. And the 1 goes over here to this 5, and it becomes a 15. Because 10 added to 5 becomes 15. Can't take half of 15 because it's an odd number. So we're going to borrow 1 from there. It'll become 14. And the 1 becomes a 10 added to 0, and it becomes a 10. So now we're going to take half of 6, 14, 14, and 10. Half of 6 is 3. Half of 14 is 7. Half of 14 is 7. And half of 10 is 5. Okay, now I want you to do number 10. Pause the video. Okay, now let's take half. We have 5 here, and we're going to make this into a 4 by borrowing. This becomes a 17. We're going to borrow from the 17 because it's odd. It becomes 16. And this becomes a 15. We're going to borrow from the 15. That becomes a 14. And 10 adds to the 0. We get 10 here. So half of the 4, the 16, the 14, and the 10 gives us 2, 8, 7, and 5.